If you're a teacher or a librarian or a mom or you're a babysitter or you have kids in your life, even if you're just an aunt and you're looking for birthday presents, I have possibly the greatest collection of books and book recommendations from different genres for kids of all ages, boys and girls, everybody. You never have to worry about gifts and you can start them off right. Let's get into it. So, one of the things that I remember most about my childhood was reading. And part of that was because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. So, I really had no choice but to just read a lot. However, part of what makes kids imaginative and empathetic and understanding of human issues is reading. And it puts them in perspectives that they wouldn't know from their second grade class. It lets them escape from their world. It lets them imagine that there's a different one. One of the best ones for me was Harry Potter. And I know that there are classics like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and Narnia that will be on a lot of kids' lists. So I try to find books that are unconventional, but it doesn't mean that I don't think Harry Potter is a good choice or Narnia or any of those other books because those are great choices. These are just a little bit different choices. I'll sort them by age. So we'll start with the ones that might be best for younger kids and then we'll go up in category. Before we start, I wanted to give a little shout out to apparently one of my faithful viewers, little Micah, and he loves my videos. I saw a video that your mom took, Micah, and I know that you love my stuff, and thank you so much. So some of these are specifically for you, books that you might like to read or have read to you, and you can save them for when you're a little bit older and you can read on your own. So, this one is a book that I got recently. It is the Charlie Brown Great Pumpkin book. A lot of you might remember that there's a Charlie Brown Halloween special, just like there's a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special, there's a Charlie Brown Christmas special. Well, now there's a Charlie Brown Halloween special. And the book essentially follows the same plot as the special, but if you want to read this instead of watch it, because I know some people process visually better than audio, and there's different styles of learning. So if you want to show your little one the magic of Charlie Brown, I highly recommend this book. The cover is also textured. It has the cutest illustrations. And there's Charlie Brown. And it's so much fun for kids to try to help read it. And you get to see all the characters and of course the classic Snoopy. Everyone loves Snoopy. Another picture book. I'm a big believer in adults reading picture books because part of the simplicity of reading as a kid is that you're looking at the pictures, you're absorbing the story, and sometimes adults tend to overcomplicate things and just focus on the antiquated literature and the jokes and the prose, and they make it very analytical and in a way that kids don't when they read. And so I'm a big believer in picture books for adults too, or teenagers, or really any age. But this book is Miss Rumphius by Barbara Cooney. This one is highly recommended. It was the winner of the American Book Award. So it's very popular. It's from Puffin Books. Illustrations are absolutely magical. And one of the best parts about picture books is the high quality illustrations. It opens up something artistic in kids that they didn't have before. It awakens, for some, a love of drawing, and maybe they want to be artists or graphic designers. This story is about a girl named Alice who grows up with her father, and she decides that she wants to plant flowers in the countryside. And the whole book follows this motto of making the world more beautiful than you left it. And she paints the skies in her father's book, and they have this adorable house that they live in together. A teacher, and she gets to travel, and she makes lots of friends traveling. And there's this lovely greenhouse in the book, too. I was always a big fan of greenhouses when I was a kid. I thought it was a very whimsical idea that plants can have their own home, and it's like a special home just for plants. And like she goes to different places, and she travels. and she rides a camel. I thought that was very cool. She has a little house. She has what some would describe now as a chronic illness, but she focuses on making the world more beautiful and helping the school children of the town. And that's one of my favorite picture books. It's a special edition, so don't worry if you don't have this specific edition. Anyone will do. But it is the Complete Tales of Winnie the Pooh by A. Milne. Winnie the Pooh was one of my favorite cartoon animated characters when I was very little. And the stories still mean a lot to me, even though obviously I'm an adult. But Winnie the Pooh, in case you somehow don't know, Winnie the Pooh is a little bear who lives in the woods with his friends, Christopher Robin, and then an assortment of animals who all have very different personalities, such as Eeyore, the very sad donkey. Cute ones of their little tree. I don't know if you saw the 2018 movie Christopher Robin, but that was about how we feel like we have to leave childhood behind when we grow up to be adults, but that the magic of childhood is always there if you just know where to look. And in this case, it's the 100-Acre Wood. And even on the back, it has what I consider a plea for the author to not have kids grow up too fast, which is, Pooh, promise you won't forget about me ever, not even when I'm 100. So many young kids. Like, I remember I was at Barnes& Noble the other day, and I saw these two girls who were maybe 10, 9 or 10, and they looked like they were 16. And I remember when I was 9 or 10, you will never see photos of this time in my life, but I had pigtails, I had sparkly headbands, I wore Hello Kitty, like little skirts. I had an obsession with polo shirts, so I looked like a little office secretary. And I played with Barbies, and I played with my dollhouse, and I played soccer, and I built forts, and I did normal kid stuff, and I watched the animated Barbie movies. These kids are like having skincare routines, and they know the skincare brands and Drunk Elephant and Glow Recipe, and they're not playing anymore. Their playtime is TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and whatever else the kids use. Because, I'm almost 20. I've kind of aged out of like some of the Gen Alpha stuff, but they're not really acting like kids anymore. They're 9 or 10, and I see these girls and they have like blowout hairstyles and full makeup, and they're wearing like clothes that adults would wear, and it's kind of sad because I don't remember doing that when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, the culture was just very different for children. Like, there was a big separation between being a kid and being an adult. And you had a whole industry for kid stuff and tween and preteen and all the cute magazines. And now they don't have that. And so kids kind of go from being a little kid to suddenly in sixth grade, they're like a fully formed adult. And part of these book recommendations is instilling that magic of childhood and not having them grow up to be 17 right after their 11th birthday. Winnie the Pooh was one of those books for me. This is, I think, one of the best books for kids. The animated Disney movies are also really amazing for Winnie the Pooh. Now we're going to get into books for kids that are a little bit older, I would say around middle grade, but also I was a really advanced reader when I was a kid. So it's not also about age, it's about ability. So I was always reading books that were a few grades above my reading level as a kid. One of the favorites for me was when I was around 10, I read a very important book, which was The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, which is a mouthful, yes. But it's about a girl who is, I'll just read you the back. Only after she escaped from fear did she really find her strength. Ada is 10 years old and has never left her one-room apartment. Her cruel mother is too humiliated by Ada's twisted clubfoot, to let her outside. So when her little brother Jamie is shipped out of London to escape the World War II, Ada sneaks out to join him. Ada and Jamie are forced upon Susan Smith, a woman used to having only herself to care for. At Susan's home, Ada teaches herself how to ride a pony, learns to read, and watches for German spies. She even begins to trust Susan, and Susan begins to love Ada and Jamie. But in the end, will their bond be enough to hold them together through wartime? Or will Ada and her brother fall back into the hands of their mother? I remember my mom always told me that there are going to be people who look a little bit different than you, who maybe, are missing a leg or an arm, or they have an injury, or they have like a really different haircut, or, maybe their skin looks different and, they're just another person. You don't have to act strange. You don't have to be afraid of them. And I learned that from a very early age. And one of the important things about books is that you can read about characters who are different than you. And as a kid, because you can't, see them, you're reading about their feelings and you relate to them. And it helps you learn humanity and empathy from a very young age. Like I was quite young when I read a lot of these books. And in this one, she has a club foot and she's extremely isolated and malnourished. She's never been outside of her apartment. And the story isn't gory or violent. It is a wartime book, but it's also for kids. So it's not going to be really graphic. Like, value the small things. As a kid, you take a lot of things for granted. You don't understand anything outside of your own perception of reality. And in this book, she's really experiencing life for the first time as a 10-year-old because she's allowed outside of her mother's apartment. So she learns what grass is for the first time because she lived in a city she didn't know. She learns how to ride a horse. She learns basic life skills with a whimsy and a wonder that a lot of us take for granted, that I really love reading about and rereading because I still reread this book often, even though I'm an adult. The Bookshop of Dust and Dreams by Mindy Thompson. This one has a little bit of, I would say, light fantasy, but it's for, I would say, maybe like third, fourth grade, but honestly, maybe even second grade, because again, like, I was reading pretty advanced stuff when I was a second grader, and, the words are also pretty large, so it wouldn't be hard for a kid to follow along, but I'll just read you what it's about. It's 1944, Sutton, New York, and Poppy's family owns and runs Rhyme and Reason, a magical bookshop that caters to people from all different places and time periods. Though her world is ravaged by World War II, customers hail from the past and the future, infusing the shop with a delightful mix of ideas and experiences. Poppy dreams of someday becoming shopkeeper like her father, though her older brother Al is technically next in line for the job. She knows all of the rules handed down from one generation of shopkeeper to the next, especially their most important one. They must never use the magic for themselves. But then Al's best friend is killed in the war, and her brother wants to use the magic of the shop to save him. With her father in the hospital suffering from a mysterious illness, the only one standing between Al and the bookstore is Poppy. Caught between her love for her brother and loyalty to her family, she knows her brother's actions could have devastating consequences that reach far beyond the bookshop as an insidious growing darkness looms. This decision is bigger than Poppy ever dreamed, and the fate of the bookshop hangs in the balance. Focuses on light fantasy, family themes, and I always loved stories like that because I grew up in a, smaller family. I only have one sibling, and reading about other families always kind of, I was able to pretend like, oh, maybe I have a sister. Oh, maybe I live in like a coastal town. This next one, I read it when I was a little bit older. I think I was around 11, but it is the Vanderbeekers of 141st Street. And I don't know where the jacket cover went. Sometimes I would get annoyed by the sensory, like the sensation of a jacket cover, so I would just take it off, and I don't know where it is. But the Vanderbeekers of 141st Street, and it's about a family that lives in New York, and they have a ton of kids, and they're about to have to be forced to move out. It is Christmas time, so the kids all band together to convince the grumpy landlord to let them stay. And it's like a very quirky ensemble cast. It's split perspective, and I always related to the younger sister, Hyacinth, because she is always looking out for the family. She's always baking things. She's always waking up early to tidy things up or take care of the dog. And that was very much me as a kid. That was my personality and temperament. And she's very crafty and creative, and she likes making gifts for her family that are homemade. And so that was always me as a kid. The book is great for, I would say, boys or girls, because there are boys in the book too. But anyone can really read this or enjoy it. One that I got for a vacation because my parents were big believers in bringing a book on vacation, but not a library book in case you lost it. So we got to go to the store and we would get, one book or two books each for a vacation. And I remember one time, I think we went to Legoland or Disneyland, and my parents let me pick out a book, and I wanted something a little bit different than my usual second grade wartime books because I was a big wartime reader when I was a youth. The Adventures of Letty Peppercorn by Sam Gayton and illustrated by Polly Bernatine. And you can tell the illustrations are just amazing. But this one is a little bit of like J.K. Rowling and a little bit of C.S. Lewis mixed together. Don't set a foot upon Albion, for it can kill you. Letty Peppercorn cannot go outside. Ma told her so right before Ma disappeared forever, so Letty's house is on stilts, and she is stuck with only the wind and a pigeon for friends. Nothing exciting ever happens to her until one winter's night, when a man with an icicle beard comes to the door. He claims to be an alchemist, the greatest that ever lived. And he is here to sell Letty his newest invention, an invention that will change her life and the world forever. An invention called snow. But snow is not the only secret the alchemist holds. He knows where Letty's ma is, and Letty is determined to get ma back, even if it means risking her own life to follow the alchemist. Join Letty as she travels across the world to reunite her family in this charming and marvelously inventive novel from Sam Gayton, beautifully illustrated by Polly Bernatine. As I recall, it's very imaginative, it's very quirky, it has a strong sense of place, so the reader, the kid, the adult, whoever, because, I think adults can read kids' books. I don't believe in policing who reads what, as long as, kids aren't reading like Tessa Bailey in 4th grade. But, because I have heard of that and it's disturbing, is very much appropriate for younger kids. I don't remember it being very scary, but I remember it having a little bit of a thrill factor, which kept me engaged and keeps readers engaged. Now we have some of the last selection of the pile, All of a Kind Family by Sydney Taylor. I discovered this when I was 7 or 8. I was very young, but I picked it up at the library, and it's about a Jewish family, and there are 5 sisters, and it's called All of a Kind Family because they're all girls, and they have this magical experience with the library, and they love the library, which I related to that a lot because as a kid, the library was basically my favorite place on earth. I would go there once a week and I would get just like piles of books. And I always related to one of the sisters, Sarah, and they talks about different Jewish holidays. And the kids go to school and they learn to read and tell time and they make friends. I think there are maybe 4 or 5 books, and I loved those too, but I always think the first one is just my favorite. Because for some reason, when I was a kid, I didn't grasp that books could be series. So I usually only read the first one and didn't discover the others until years later, which was infuriating. I was a little bit older. I think I was maybe 13. And this is Roald Dahl's Matilda, illustrated by Quentin Blake. And there is another edition of this that I read that I preferred, A Brilliant Child with a Magical Mind, but her parents have decided she is a waste of space. And her headmistress, Miss Trunchbull, is a terrible bully who thinks children are rotten and awful and should be locked up. It's time for Matilda to find the power to change her story and show them just how extraordinary children can be. This book teaches kids how to handle bullying, how to handle critics, how to handle, like mean teachers. And I read this book and it taught me that sometimes magic in children's books is not bad, and it's not necessarily to fight off, evil or anything like that, but it's to conquer the blockages in your own life and to make yourself feel joy and peace. And Matilda, she has this power, but she uses it for one thing. She doesn't use it to, become a superhero. She uses it to help her friends at school. It deals with a lot of loneliness and how to make yourself be your own friend. Baby Island by Carol Ryrie Brink. This book is about 2 sisters in the Titanic who get shipwrecked and have to take care of babies. And I loved this book because I was obsessed with babies. I didn't have a younger sibling, so I didn't get to babysit anybody. But I always loved the concept of getting to dress them and feed them and play with them and pretend I was their mom for a little bit. I was always doing that at parks. I was just like going up to random moms and being like, hey, can I watch your kid for like 30 minutes? And they always said yes because they were usually exhausted. And so I would just babysit their kid for a little while and like give them snacks and stuff. Also has this lovely vintage like typewriter interface to it where the words look very old, which I loved. A graphic novel, so it's a little bit easier to get through, if a kid struggles with reading just like without a lot of pictures. And this is the book Ghost by Raina Telgemeier, about Dia de los Muertos, and it's about a girl whose sister has cystic fibrosis, and they move to this really cloudy, foggy town in Halloween time, and they're learning about the Dia de los Muertos festival and all the different traditions, and it talks about health disorders and how that affects the family and making friends in a new place. The fall vibes are just immaculate. Raina Telgemeier is one of the best children's graphic novel authors. I loved her Babysitter's Club series, and the Ghosts book is also fabulous. Her book Smile would be great if you have a kid who has braces or is going to be getting braces. That can be a very insecure time. I remember it was for me, and that book is really great. Last book is maybe one of the most important ones that I read, which was when I was 12 or 13. I started reading Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. And this is, as you can tell, a little bit hefty. It's definitely middle grade. It's not for second graders, probably. Girl who finds out that she's an elf, and it's this whole world about elves, and she is genetically engineered to have these powers and abilities above everybody else, but she doesn't know how to use them, so she has to go to school to learn how. And she makes friends, and there's little cutesy little 6th, 7th grade love interests and little cute romances, and she gets adopted by this family, and so it talks about blended family and also grief, and it's such a long series too. Like, I honestly grew up reading it because they're still putting books out. I'm still reading it. So I've grown up reading the series for like 6 or 7 years now. It is fantasy, so if you want to get your kid into more of a fantastical world that is a book that they maybe wouldn't have been assigned to read in school, Keeper of the Lost Cities is definitely the perfect book for that. And thank you so much for watching. These are the lists of books that I think would be perfect for a kid of a variety of ages, from baby to middle grader, elementary schooler, no matter what their life situation is. So if you're a librarian, a teacher, a mom, a dad, an aunt, a sibling, whoever, if you're looking for gifts or recommendations, these are the perfect books to teach kids important skills and life lessons, and also just let them have fun and relax and have that escapism that reading definitely was for me as a kid. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm Grace. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you can see more of me. Shout out again to Micah, my adorable little viewer, and I hope you have a lovely day, Micah, and everybody else too. And I will see you next time. Bye!